I want to show you something that happened quietly this year inside one of the largest companies on Earth. No dramatic press conference, no breaking news alert, just a memo sent internally that very few people outside the company ever read in full. And yet that memo may describe the biggest shift in how ordinary people get paid a salary since the assembly line replaced the craftsman. Here is the number first, because you need to sit with it. 14,000 people fired. Not because the company was struggling, not because sales were falling. Amazon is doing better than almost any company in history. It fired them for one reason, written in plain language by its own CEO. Jassy, artificial intelligence is now doing the work that these 14,000 people used to do. And here is the part almost nobody is talking about. This is not the end of the story. Amazon has said publicly it plans to cut up to 30,000 corporate jobs in total. 14,000 is just what has already happened. In the next few minutes, I want to show you exactly what happened inside Amazon, why it is not an isolated case, and why the pattern behind it is bigger than any one company, any one CEO, and any one industry. Stay with me, because once you see the pattern, you will start noticing it everywhere. Let me start with what actually happened, because the details matter more than the headline. Earlier this year, Amazon CEO Jassy wrote a memo to employees. It was not a panicked memo. It was calm, deliberate, almost administrative in tone. The message was simple. Amazon is investing heavily in AI systems, AI agents, in his words, that can now handle tasks that used to require entire departments of people across corporate roles, cloud operations, and HR. And because of that, Amazon expects its total corporate workforce to shrink in the coming years, even as the company itself keeps growing. Read that sentence again. The company grows. The number of people needed to run it shrinks. That is a new kind of relationship between a company's success and its workforce. And it is the exact opposite of how the economy has worked for the last 100 years. For most of modern history, a growing company meant more jobs. More customers meant more warehouses, more managers, more support staff, more everything. Growth and employment moved together. What this memo describes is growth and employment moving apart. The company is not shrinking because it is failing. It is shrinking its people because it no longer needs as many of them to succeed. And this is not a one-company story. Independent researchers who track layoffs for a living, the same firm that has tracked job cuts across America for decades, reported that in 2025 alone, tens of thousands of layoffs were explicitly attributed to AI by the companies making the cuts. And in the first half of this year, that number more than doubled. For the first time since researchers started tracking it, AI became the single most cited reason for job cuts in America, ahead of the economy, ahead of restructuring, ahead of everything else companies used to blame. Now, why does this matter to you, even if you have never worked at this company and never will? Because this is not about one employer. It is about what a job actually is. For your entire working life, a job has meant something specific, a set of tasks that only a human being could do, tasks that required judgment, communication, and coordination that machines could not replicate. That assumption sat underneath every salary negotiation, every career plan, every mortgage approved based on steady income. What is happening right now is that assumption quietly breaking, one department at a time. Not because AI is perfect, it is not, but because it is good enough and cheap enough that companies can now do with fewer people what used to require many. I want to give you a historical parallel here, because we have been through a version of this before, and the lesson from it is not the one most people expect. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, farming employed roughly half of all working Americans. Then came mechanization, the tractor, the combine harvester, the mechanical planter. Within a few decades, the share of Americans working in agriculture collapsed from around 40% to under 5%. Millions of farm jobs simply vanished. At the time, this looked like a catastrophe in the making. Entire rural communities depended on farm labor. And yet the economy did not collapse. It reorganized. The people who left farms did not stay unemployed forever, over 1 or 2 generations. They moved into factories, then into offices, then into entirely new industries that did not exist before mechanization freed up that labor. But here is the part of the lesson people forget. That transition took decades, and it was brutal for the generation living through it. Whole towns emptied out. Many workers never fully recovered their footing. It was often their children, not them, who found stable ground in the new economy. The lesson is not, don't worry, it always works out. The lesson is it works out eventually, for the system, but not always for the individual caught in the middle of it. And not on a timeline that feels comfortable while you're living it. That is the honest parallel. The economy as a whole has absorbed technological shocks like this before. Individual careers, individual households have not always been so lucky. Now let me be as honest with you as I try to be every time, because I do not want to sell you fear. This is not the end of white-collar work. It is not the end of this company or any company. Most jobs still require things AI genuinely cannot do well yet. Real judgment under uncertainty, physical presence, trust built over years, accountability when something goes wrong. AI is automating tasks inside jobs faster than it is eliminating entire professions. And plenty of companies are hiring aggressively in AI-related roles, even as they cut in others. This is a redistribution as much as a reduction. I cannot tell you whether your specific job is safe. Anyone who tells you they know exactly which jobs will vanish and which won't is guessing with more confidence than the evidence allows. What I can tell you is narrower. The pattern of a growing, profitable company shrinking its own workforce because AI now does the work is no longer rare or experimental. It has become one of the most common reasons companies give for layoffs in 2026. That is a measurable fact, not a prediction. So let me bring this to your own kitchen table, because that is really what this is about. You do not need to panic, and you do not need to quit your job tomorrow. What you need is to stop assuming that the number of people a growing company needs will stay the same as it always has. Ask yourself honestly, how much of my own job is tasks, the kind of repeatable, describable work that a system can learn to do, versus judgment, relationships, and accountability that are much harder to automate? That single question asked honestly tells you more about your own exposure than any headline will. And if that question ever pushes you toward a change, new skills, a different role, a different industry, make that decision slowly, on your own timeline, based on your own situation, never in a panic, and never because someone selling you a course or a program is trying to frighten you into a decision this week. So, let me close the loop I opened. Amazon, a company that is thriving, not struggling, has already cut 14,000 jobs and plans to cut up to 30,000. Not despite its success, but as part of how it plans to keep succeeding, using AI to do the work people used to do. And Amazon is not alone. Across the economy, AI has gone from a minor footnote in layoff announcements to the single most cited reason companies give for cutting jobs. This has happened quietly, memo by memo, company by company, without a single dramatic headline that captured the whole picture at once. I cannot tell you which company or which job is next, but I can tell you that the assumption sitting underneath most people's careers, that a growing, successful company needs a growing number of people to run it, is no longer something you can take for granted. And the last time a shift like this happened, in agriculture over 100 years ago, it worked out for the economy as a whole. But it was brutal for the generation that had to live through the middle of it. If this showed you something about the ground underneath your own job that you had not thought about before, share it with someone who has never once wondered why Amazon, a company doing better than ever, keeps announcing layoffs. And I would like to hear from you. If you have seen this happening inside your own company or industry, tell the others watching what it actually looks like from the inside, because that is worth more than any statistic I can quote. I read every comment. I will see you in the next one.